I didn't cry when I found out my wife of 8 years was sleeping with a flashy investment banker. I didn't scream, I didn't punch a wall, and I certainly didn't burst into her hotel room to catch them in the act. Instead, I stood in the marble lobby of a $450 a night downtown hotel, holding the 24 anniversary roses she would never receive, and I smiled. Because as the valet nervously told me she had just left in a black Mercedes with another man's hand on her lower back, a profound, crystal-clear realization washed over me. She thought she was leaving a boring, average guy for a wealthy high roller. What she didn't know, what she had never known, was that the roof over her head, the luxury SUV she drove, and even the $3,000 designer handbag she paraded around with, legally belonged to my secret $47 million commercial real estate holding company. In exactly 48 hours, she wouldn't just be divorced. She would be completely locked out, vehicleless, and entirely bankrupt. If you want to know what happens when a narcissist tries to take half of an empire she never knew existed, listen closely. Because what I did wasn't just revenge. It was a masterclass in corporate legal warfare. My name is Nathan. I'm 39 years old, and if you saw me on the street, you'd never look twice. I wear worn-in denim, flannel shirts, and I drive a 2015 Ford F-150 with a few dents in the tailgate. I don't wear a Rolex, I don't pop bottles at clubs, and I don't talk about money. Ever. But behind the scenes, I build things. Not glamorous skyscrapers or luxury penthouses. I build strip malls, medical office parks, self-storage facilities. The boring, ugly concrete structures that quietly print money while the rest of the world sleeps. I bought my first distressed property in 2009, right after the market crashed and everyone else was running for the hills. I bought it for $400,000, flipped it, and sold it 3 years later for $1.2 million. I rolled that into 2 more, then 4, then 8. Today, I own 17 commercial properties across the Denver metro area. Total valuation, just north of $47 million. Annual net income, about $3.2 million. And my wife, Vanessa, had absolutely no idea. Let me explain why. Wealth is a funny thing. It acts like a magnifying glass on human nature. When I made my first million in my late 20s, I was dating a girl named Ashley. The exact second she found out what my bank account looked like, she mutated. Suddenly, the restaurants we used to love weren't nice enough. She wanted a bigger diamond, designer shoes, VIP access. She stopped looking at me like a partner and started looking at me like an ATM. So when I met Vanessa at a charity fundraiser 8 years ago, I made a vow. I would keep my finances completely private. Not hidden, private. When she asked what I did, I told her I work in real estate, manage a few small properties. It pays the bills. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Vanessa was a pharmaceutical sales rep, making around $140,000 a year. She was stunning, ambitious, and loved the finer things in life. For a long time, we had a perfectly balanced dynamic. She paid for her clothes, her car, and her personal expenses. I covered the mortgage, the groceries, the utilities, and we split vacations. We lived in a nice but modest house in Highlands Ranch. To her, we were an upper-middle-class couple living comfortably. She never asked to see my tax returns, and I never offered them. I wanted a woman who loved Nathan the man, not Nathan the portfolio. For a while, I genuinely thought I had found her. But the problem with pretending to be average is that eventually, the people who crave exceptional status get bored. About 6 months ago, the cracks started to show. It started with small, passive-aggressive jabs. We'd be at dinner, and she'd sigh, looking at her phone. My friend Karen's husband just bought her a brand new Tesla Model X for their anniversary. she'd say, staring right at me. Why don't we ever do anything big like that? Another time, she dragged me through Nordstrom, pointing at a $3,000 purse. Can you imagine spending this much on a bag? She laughed. But her eyes were dead serious. She wanted the bag. She wanted the Tesla. She wanted the Instagram perfect life. And she secretly resented me for not providing it. The irony? I could have bought her 10 Teslas in cash that afternoon without even checking my balance. But the fact that she was measuring my worth by my willingness to buy her status symbols told me everything I needed to know. Then came the red flags. The sudden, late-night sales conferences. The new, expensive perfume. The way she started guarding her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. She was dressing differently. Shorter skirts, lower necklines, and it definitely wasn't for our movie nights on the couch. I didn't confront her. I don't operate on emotion. I operate on data. I hired a private investigator named Marcus. Former law enforcement, discreet, and ruthlessly efficient. I need the whole picture, I told him across a diner table. Names, dates, locations, financials. You sure you want to open this box, man? Marcus asked, sipping his black coffee. I already know what's in the box, I replied. I just need the receipts. 2 weeks later, Marcus handed me a thick manila folder. The contents were nauseating, yet entirely predictable. Photos, time-stamped hotel logs, dinner receipts. Her target's name was Garrett Hale, 34 years old, investment banker. He drove a black 2024 Mercedes S-Class, wore custom Italian suits, and took her to restaurants where the appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery bill. He was everything she thought she deserved. Flashy, expensive, performative. But Marcus was thorough. He didn't just stalk Garrett. He ran a background check. Garrett Hale was a walking illusion. He made a high salary, sure, but he was leveraged up to his eyeballs. His credit cards were maxed, his luxury condo was rented, and that shiny Mercedes? Leased at an extortionate interest rate. The guy was drowning in debt to maintain the appearance of wealth. He was completely broke. But Vanessa didn't know that. She just saw the shiny hood ornament and thought she had hit the jackpot. Sitting in my home office, staring at photos of my wife kissing a broke fraud outside a hotel I could have bought with petty cash, I felt a strange sense of peace. The test was over. She failed. Now, it was time for the lesson. But wait, if you're married, doesn't she automatically get half of your $47 million? You might be asking yourself that. If I had been careless, the answer would be yes. But I don't build empires just to let a cheating spouse tear them down. I called my attorney, Richard Moss. Richard is a corporate bulldog who handles all my commercial acquisitions. I walked into his office, dropped the PI's folder on his mahogany desk, and said, "It's time to activate the contingency plan. I need to divorce-proof my entire existence." Richard adjusted his glasses. Let's review the fortress. Step 1. My assets. Every single commercial property I owned was held in individual LLCs, limited liability companies. My personal name was not on a single deed. Furthermore, an umbrella holding company owned those LLCs. All of these entities were established before the marriage. They were strictly premarital assets. Step 2. Commingling. In divorce, if you mix marital money with business money, the business becomes fair game. But I was paranoid from day one. I paid myself a modest salary from the business to my personal account. Every grocery bill, every date night, every personal expense came from that salary. Vanessa's name was never on a single business document, bank account, or tax filing. Legally, she had zero claim to my empire. That covers the business, Richard said, tapping his pen. But the house, Nathan. You bought the house in Highlands Ranch during the marriage. That makes it a marital asset, She's going to go after it. I leaned forward, a cold smile forming. What if I never bought the house? Richard stopped tapping. What are you talking about? Check the deed, Richard. He pulled up the public records on his monitor. His eyes widened. Cross Holdings, LLC. Exactly, I said. I didn't buy the house. My holding company bought the house in cash. I've been personally paying market rate rent to my own company for the last 8 years. Technically, Vanessa and I are just tenants. Richard actually laughed out loud. You son of a bitch. You've been paying yourself rent? It gets better, I said. Look at her car. The Audi SUV she drove? Leased under one of my corporate entities and assigned to her as a fringe benefit for tax purposes. The custom Italian leather sofas she bought for the living room? Purchased using the corporate card as staged office furniture and provided to the tenants as part of the rental agreement. On paper, Vanessa owned her clothes, her jewelry, and half of our measly $40,000 personal joint checking account. That was it. She owned absolutely nothing else. I want the locks changed, the car repossessed, and her served with papers all in the same 24-hour window, I instructed. Richard grinned. Let's go to war. I waited for the perfect moment. It arrived on a Thursday evening. Marcus texted me. Target is at the Crawford Hotel, room 1847. Checked in 20 minutes ago. I drove downtown, bought the roses, and walked into the hotel lobby. I already told you how that ended. The valet confirmed she was gone. I pulled out my phone. Her last text to me was, Girls' spa night. Don't wait up. Love you. I typed back, Enjoy your last night in my house. Hit send. Turned off my phone. The machinery I had built over 8 years instantly roared to life. I called my property management team. I need the locks changed at the Highlands Ranch property immediately. Send a crew to document and inventory every piece of furniture inside. Next, I called the corporate fleet manager. The Audi SUV. Track the GPS and disable the ignition remotely. Send a tow truck to bring it back to the corporate lot. The next morning, the sun rose over Denver, and Vanessa's nightmare began. She had spent the night with Garrett. When she walked out of his condo to drive to work, her Audi was gone. She panicked, assuming it was stolen, and had to take an Uber to her office. At 9:15 a.m., as she stood in the bustling lobby of her pharmaceutical company, a man in a suit walked up to her. Vanessa Cross? He asked. Yes, she replied. He handed her a thick stack of legal documents. You've been served. When she finally turned her phone on, the reality of her situation hit her like a freight train. She rushed to our house, the house she thought she owned, only to find her key wouldn't turn. A printed notice was taped to the door. Property of Cross Holdings LLC. Unauthorized entry will be prosecuted as trespassing. She called me 47 times that day. She left voicemails sobbing, screaming, begging. Nathan, what is going on? You can't lock me out of my own house. Where is my car? Answer the phone. I sent one text, drafted by my lawyer. All communication must go through my legal counsel, Richard Moss. Do not contact me again. By the end of the week, Vanessa had hired Sharon Kellerman. Sharon was a notorious divorce attorney, a shark who prided herself on taking wealthy husbands for everything they had. She sent threatening letters demanding immediate access to the house, spousal support, and a full forensic audit of my finances. Let her audit, I told Richard. I want her to see exactly what she threw away. 2 weeks later, we sat in a sterile courtroom for the temporary orders hearing. Vanessa sat across the aisle, looking exhausted and pale. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Sharon stood up, aggressively waving her documents. Your Honor, my client has been subjected to extreme financial abuse. Her husband locked her out of her marital home without notice, stole her vehicle, and left her completely destitute. We are demanding immediate access to the property, the return of the car, and $10,000 a month in temporary alimony. Judge Patricia Ortiz, a no-nonsense woman with graying hair, looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Cross, would you care to explain why you evicted your wife? Richard stood calmly, buttoning his suit jacket. Your Honor, Mr. Cross did not evict his wife because Mr. Cross does not own the home. The property is legally owned by Cross Holdings, LLC. Mr. Cross is merely a tenant. Sharon scoffed loudly. This is an absurd, transparent sham. He's using a shell company to hide marital assets. Objection, Richard fired back smoothly. Cross Holdings, LLC was established 3 years before this marriage occurred. It is a strictly premarital corporate entity. I have provided the court with the lease agreement, signed by Mr. Cross in 2017, proving he personally pays market rate rent to the LLC. Judge Ortiz flipped through the paperwork, her brow furrowed. Mrs. Cross, did you ever sign a lease? Or contribute to the mortgage? There was no mortgage, Vanessa stammered. We owned it. He told me we owned it. No, Mrs. Cross, the judge corrected gently but firmly. His company owned it. You were legally a guest in a corporate-owned rental. And the vehicle? A company fleet vehicle, Your Honor, Richard chimed in, sliding another document forward. Provided to the tenant as a fringe benefit. The company has recalled the vehicle for corporate use. Sharon's face turned deep red. Your Honor, this is fraud. He has a duty to support his wife. He runs a multi-million-dollar real estate empire, which is entirely premarital and properly shielded, Judge Ortiz noted, reviewing the forensic accountant's report. Mr. Cross kept immaculate records. There is zero commingling of funds. Mrs. Cross makes $140,000 a year on her own. She is perfectly capable of supporting herself. Request for access to the property is denied. Request for the vehicle is denied. Request for spousal support. Denied. The gavel slammed down. It echoed through the quiet courtroom like a gunshot. Vanessa collapsed back into her chair, her hands covering her face. Sharon, the fearsome shark, looked like she had just swallowed a golf ball. Outside the courtroom, Vanessa finally cornered me. Her eyes were red, mascara running down her cheeks. The arrogance, the entitlement, it was all completely stripped away. You planned this, she whispered, her voice trembling. You set me up. You knew you had millions, and you let me think we were just getting by. I didn't set you up, Vanessa, I said, my voice dead flat. I protected myself. I wanted to see if you loved me enough to stay when things were average. And the moment you saw a shiny, fake gold watch on a broke banker's wrist, you jumped ship. Garrett isn't broke, she shot back, a desperate defensive instinct. I almost laughed. I pulled a piece of paper from my breast pocket, the background check Marcus had run, and handed it to her. His Mercedes is leased. He owes $80,000 in credit card debt, and his condo is rented. You didn't upgrade, Vanessa. You downgraded. Have a nice life. Before I turned away, I handed her a second envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000. What is this? She asked, confused. It's not a settlement. The court says I owe you nothing, I said. It's severance pay. Buy a Honda, get an apartment, don't ever contact me again. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. I sold one of my older properties for $8 million in pure profit, and bought a sprawling penthouse in downtown Denver, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. I didn't buy it to show off. I bought it because the walls were down. I didn't have to hide anymore. I heard through the grapevine that Garrett dumped Vanessa exactly 2 months after she moved into his apartment. Once he realized she wasn't walking away from the marriage with millions in alimony to fund his fake lifestyle, the love suddenly vanished. The bank repossessed his Mercedes shortly after. Vanessa is now living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, driving a used Toyota, and working the exact same job, knowing every single day what she threw away. I started dating again, but this time with total transparency. I met a woman named Claire. She's a high school teacher. She clips coupons, drives an old sedan, and thinks a $100 dinner is an insane extravagance. On our third date, I looked her in the eye and told her exactly who I was, what I owned, and how much I was worth. She just smiled, took a sip of her cheap wine, and said, "That's nice, but can you fix a leaky faucet?" We've been together for a year now. Listen to me very carefully. You cannot build a legacy with a partner who measures your worth by the price tags you attach to them. You cannot love someone into respecting you. And most importantly, you cannot protect your assets after the betrayal happens. You have to build the fortress before the storm arrives. When my ex-wife walked out of that hotel with another man, she thought she was stepping into a luxurious new life. She didn't realize she was stepping off a cliff, entirely of her own making. If this story hit home for you, drop a comment below saying, "Build the fortress." If you've ever had to quietly protect what's yours from someone who wanted to tear it apart, this video is for you. Hit subscribe for more stories about the quiet, brutal power of strategic preparation. Because the best revenge isn't getting angry. The best revenge is letting the law do the talking.